Welcome to Desert Wanderers. If you're new here, we bridge the gap between you and the person in the pew next to you. Today we have a special host, Father Cintra. He will be doing his Generational Catholicism series. This plays on the third week of every month and will be a new segment for our show on Desert Wanderers. We're so excited to bring this to you. Let's jump right into it.
Big Dodges, little Dodges, hello.
Hello, Father.
So to our listeners out there, we're getting ready to start a new conversation here, a new episode, following up on our previous discussions regarding parenting and specifically what does it look like to live a generational Catholicism, to live a Catholicism that is easily, or at least more easily is probably not the right word because it comes with lots of crosses and probably an increasing number of crosses as we go along, but what facilitates the transmission of the faith from one generation to the next. And we'll be talking a lot about this book, or at least using this book as a structure here, this book called Forming Families, Forming Saints by Father Carter Griffin. And I'll explain the book a little more, but before I do, let me say a prayer for us. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, as you inspired Saint Benedict to gather disciples in prayer and work with an ordered way of life, guide our families as we strive to bring order into our lives, our work, our recreation, and our worship. May Saint Benedict intercede for us so that, following his holy example, our homes may be a place of peace and order for all who live therein and for those who receive our hospitality. May the consecrated men and women who follow the rule of Saint Benedict continue to be an inspiration for those of us who serve you in the world, and may our prayers join theirs in worshiping you ceaselessly through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, God forever and ever. Amen. In the Father, and the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. So that prayer is from this first chapter, which takes Saint Benedict as a patron and model. But before I explain a little bit more, I wanted to get a little update from the little Dodges. Kenny and Catherine, you guys are getting ready to have one more baby. How are you all doing? When is the baby due?
Exactly 1 week, I think. So just in the home stretch, and we're just on baby watch. So any day now. Yeah, we're excited. Everything's good. Just the waiting game.
Mm-hmm. How are the kids doing?
They're going crazy. They're a little stir crazy over the baby. Yeah, it's like they smell blood in the water, like a weakness. They're all like testing their boundaries. It's been pretty hectic, but we're doing all right.
Even Rosie, you think she knows what's going on?
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know, she's getting ousted.
Yeah, all the time. But that's pretty normal for all kids to regress or test boundaries or, figure out the new system once you have a new baby. So it's kind of run of the mill for every child. But yeah, they're excited. Every day they're disappointed that I'm not having the baby, that I didn't have the baby last night or whatever. And keeps telling me to go and lift heavy things in the garden because apparently I said that would
help.
Yeah.
So he's trying to crack the whip.
Ken, you said she knows she's getting ousted. Is that what you said?
Yeah, as like the little baby. She's 2, just turned 2, and she runs the household, tries to, and has her spot cuddling with mom and dad, and she's gonna have to make some room pretty soon.
And Mikey probably remembers Rosie being born, right? And probably he's probably a veteran at this point.
Yeah. I don't know how much or what he remembers. I know he remembers the fire truck and the ambulance, which is good. I don't think he saw the whole thing in the garage floor of Rosie being born. But he's
podcast conversation.
Yeah, he's excited about it.
For anybody who doesn't know, our last baby was born in the garage on accident. Just came very fast.
I remember getting that. I remember getting that phone call from you guys.
Yeah, but
I remember my chin
everything
hitting
was
the,
good.
yeah,
Where we needed to be in the long run. They came and got us.
yeah. God provides. God provides.
Yeah.
Well, good. Let me explain just the kind of the framework of this book, and then I'm going to take a little bit of time, maybe 3 minutes, to read the introduction to the human formation pillar, which will help us and our listeners to kind of paint a picture of what it is that they're talking about. But first, what is a pillar? So they have these four pillars, and this is mirroring what the priestly formation looks like today. And it's not like these are new concepts, but the way that it's organized is helpful. And in seminary, they talk about human formation, spiritual formation, intellectual formation. And for priests, the fourth pillar is pastoral formation. So pastoral care, pastoral work. And it's really important for priests, and I'm learning this as a new priest, as a toddler priest coming up on my second year here. But it's certainly something that they told us a lot, and I've definitely seen it to be true, is that the pastoral formation is, in a sense, it's the least important. Now, it's the one that's most visible. You know, people see us saying mass and doing pastoral work, but that can only be those fruits can only come about if there is a healthy human formation underlying everything. And nobody's perfect, but at least a healthy human formation. And then upon that soil, there can be a healthy spiritual formation, and then a sound intellectual formation, and then finally the pastoral formation can flow from that and bear good fruit, hopefully, God willing. For children and for families, this book is proposing that the same framework of understanding what parenting or Catholic parenting can look like can be the same framework can be applied with one adjustment. Instead of pastoral formation, they call it apostolic formation. And in that, they have things like interpersonal skills and love for souls and apologetics and vocation or discernment and things like this. And so that's, we want to see that in kids, but are there things that have to precede that? And I think oftentimes, when we start talking about um, Catholic parenting, or what does it look like to pass on the faith from one generation to the next, what oftentimes we immediately gravitate to is things that are important, obviously, but things like praying the rosary every day, praying as a family together. The family that stays together prays together. I think that's true. At least that's part of the truth. Also, going to mass every Sunday, of course, that's indispensable. We've talked about that a lot in previous episodes. Um, Picking the right peer groups, especially in adolescence, having, watching the right shows or not watching the wrong shows, movies, etc. Proper, boundaries towards the popular culture. And then later on, going to good Catholic colleges, or at least with good Catholic programs, and having a good parish and good liturgy and good music, all these things. Like, these are the things I think that for many of us first come to mind when it comes to helping kids grow up Catholic. But maybe, and this is what this book is arguing, and I think, and I agree with them, is that there is something that has to precede all of that, which is the human formation. And we'll go into what that is. But the how, just to stress here right off the bat, how important a healthy human formation is. And with a healthy human formation, all the other things can take root and all the other things are indispensable. But without a healthy human formation, then those other things are still important. But because the soil is not as fertile, the tree is not going to develop as healthily as it otherwise could. Before I read their introduction here about what human formation is, anything you guys want to bounce back on all of that? Sorry, I think you might. Oh, there you go.
Okay. So Father, the couple things that um, I can reflect on when you say that the two, and I separate them as two parts, as one with the children, and then when you were talking as the adult in dealing with the children. And the rosary is important. The family that prays together stays together. That's important for sure. And the mass is obviously important. But it seems like a lot of our day-to-day living, kind of because it was homeschool, but not necessarily, because when you wake up, you need to be kind to your brother and sister. You need to do the chores that you were told to do. You need to obey the hierarchy of the family. So there's all these learning things that kids are learning from a young age, not necessarily saying that it's right out of the Catholic perspective, but it's out of being a good human being and serving your family in the hierarchy of the family and your place in the family. And I think kids learn that their place, and they're comfortable in their place if they are comforted there, if they are rewarded for some of those things. And I think they learn that from the very beginning. Um, and then separating from that as the parent who's trying to manage that, and then reflecting on yourself, because you're growing and learning as well. This is the first time that you have been this parent, and you are seeing mistakes that you have made and owning some of those mistakes, and your kids seeing that you are trying to either correct or be better as a person is important too. They can see your humanity and your place in the universe and before God. Like, I am not the all knowing and all seeing person here. I am trying to manage my way through this, and being humble in front of your kids, I think, is big too. Um, that they can see, your humanity in it too. So I see both of those things happening. And it seems like the older I get, the more I see those weaknesses. And then I all of a sudden feel like that 5-year-old kid who's trying to figure it out. And I'm 60 and I'm like, okay, it's almost like I'm learning it for the first time again. It's very an interesting perspective to look at that, because I think you just have kind of a more of a reflective um, thought process. So anyway, that's
Beautiful. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I think that helps us to kind of tease out these two separate categories, which I'd love for us to unpack, but we can just flag them here, which are, one is parenting itself, right? So parents trying to raise their kids, trying to pass on things to their kids. And so in your case, the big dodge is you did this for your kids, and now you're also helping your kids do this for your grandkids. And the little dodges are doing this now, and doing this for the first time, and learning and applying what you learned from your parents and from other sources. So things that you're trying to give. And so that's one category. But then there's this other category that runs side by side, or really more like interwoven with it, which is what's going on in our own hearts, or especially or specifically in your own hearts as you're parenting, as you're trying to parent your kids, right? So you're trying to show these things to them, but then inevitably things come up inside of you, things from your own childhood, maybe things that you were aware of before, maybe things that you weren't, maybe things that were kind of in the shadow, they say, or things that were maybe wounds or trauma that hadn't yet been processed, or maybe it had been, but it's still kind of coming up to the surface. And, even as you say, I feel like a 5-year-old, there's this whole kind of theory out there about parts. There are different parts of us within us, and some parts of us may be really mature, but then other parts of us maybe are kind of stuck, in a particular area, and or a particular stage of development, so to speak. And they talk about how trauma can result in that. And I certainly have seen this in my own life, and going through seminary, and then now as a priest, it's like I'll be in a work situation or in a ministry situation or in a friendship situation with another priest, and I start, seeing parts of my heart be poked and be like, oh wow, this part is still kind of, stuck in this area over here where I didn't, get enough affirmation, or when I was hurt and nobody was there to console me, or I was just really confused, and I'm still, that confusion is kind of bubbling to the surface now. And actually, something like this just happened just a couple of nights ago, and maybe I'll share at some point. But those things are happening. So it's like, okay, so as you're parenting your own, it's not like we're just computers, right? It's like we have hearts, and we bring all of our stuff with us, and so that's the other category. It's like, yeah, what does it look like to be attentive to that, and to be managing that, but also to be receiving healing in those areas, so that the parents can be sanctified, first of all, right? And this title is helpful. It's like forming families, forming saints. The parents need to be sanctified, and then also the kids are being healed and sanctified through that. And so we're gonna have those two categories there. So it might be helpful to just say, like, as things come up, like, okay, this comes up in regards to the category about parenting, and this other about, category of our own hearts. Well, let me read the introduction for the human formation pillar from this book. And I think, we're not going to exhaust just the human formation topic here, but it'll be a good introduction. Italy is known for many cultural achievements. It has churches in the ancient ruins of a great empire, centuries of artistic masterpieces, and sublime sacred music, the latest fashions and luxury automobiles. For many, however, Italy is most famous for its cuisine. Ask any Italian chef for the secret of his cooking, however, and the answer will likely be simple and straightforward. Use fresh ingredients. Formation is a bit like fine cuisine. You might know how to make the most elegant, complex, and expensive dishes, but it won't work if you don't use fresh ingredients. Human formation seeks to bring the best ingredients into the lives of our children so that they can be free, upright, confident, and generous human beings. It provides the raw material, so to speak, for the other areas of formation. So it's just to highlight that, to be free, upright, confident, and generous human beings, right? And hopefully that's right away. That's the goal, right? I mean, we're going to add other goals as we go along with the other layers. But if somebody is really pious, for example, but they're not free, upright, confident, and generous, something can be healed. Something can be further developed. And so this human formation is addressing that: free, upright, confident, and generous. Each pillar of formation boasts its unique importance. Human formation stands out as the precondition for the other three pillars of formation, but that is not all. It also stands out as the one best formed early in life, that is, in the family. Certainly, a solid spiritual, intellectual, and apostolic foundation should also be laid in childhood, but when that does not happen, much of it can be regained later. In the case of human formation, however, such remediation in later life is often only partially successful. Since many elements of our personality are so deeply rooted in our childhood, parents can have a decisive impact in their children's futures by paying close attention to their human development. Given the complexity of human nature, the aims of human formation are a bit sprawling. Of first importance, it is about building character, especially moral character, by cultivating a well-formed conscience, the capacity to discern right from wrong, and the self-discipline to choose the good. So that's another helpful list: to develop moral character, well-formed conscience, capacity to discern right from wrong, and the self-discipline to choose the good. And we see that, this relates to, we can see kind of these things mapping onto, for example, the consequences of the fall, right? If because of the fall we have a fallen or a darkened intellect, And so we need to develop that intellect with the light of Christ, the light of truth, in order to know what's true and what's wrong. So we first need to know what it is, but then just the intellect is not enough. We need a disciplined will in order, and that was another consequence of the fall, the weakening of the will. So we need a will that's strengthened by virtue, by the development of virtue, in order to have the discipline to choose the good. And that begins very early on. And you already can, just as you were saying a moment ago, you're already alluding to that, that little kids, they can start to learn, little toddlers, they start to, they can start to be taught what is right and wrong and what is good and bad. Human formation also includes developing balanced habits of life, physical fitness, the capacity for personal organization, and an ordered use of time. It strives to cultivate temperance, sincerity, and self-confidence. It helps us to harness the power of technology without being enslaved by social media, the internet, and the allure of digital devices. Interior freedom is cultivated in human formation, especially the freedom of affective maturity, that is, the capacity to understand and be enriched by our feelings without being driven and dominated by them. Affectively mature people are pure of heart, possessing both interior and exterior chastity and healthy boundaries in their friendships. They are open to correction and are able to both exercise and respond to authority well. They are able to acknowledge and channel their frustrations and angry feelings in wholesome ways, a quality so needed and rare today. Human formation also has a communal character, fostering a capacity to give oneself to others, to fight against selfishness and individualism, and to be generous in serving. It includes affability and discretion, humility, courtesy, hospitality, compassion, and loyalty. Well-formed individuals listen and communicate well, are quick to understand and forgive, and are able to create and sustain deep, virtuous, life-giving friendships. All four pillars of formations tend to rise or fall together. Without the human qualities of moral uprightness and effective maturity, for example, it is difficult to see how the interior life fostered in spiritual formation can thrive. Without a balanced life, personal order, and a good use of time, intellectual formation will falter. The importance of human maturity is especially evident in the apostolic dimension of formation. If we lack humility or compassion, how can someone encounter Christ through us? If we cannot listen or communicate well, if we lack generosity or discretion, as St. John Paul II wrote in Pastores Dabo Vobis, the human personality of the priest is to be a bridge and not an obstacle for others in their meeting with Jesus Christ. This is true not only of priests, but of all Christians. And here's the last paragraph. The following chapter is on order. So these are the 5 subchapters within this pillar. Order, sincerity, chastity, fortitude, and magnanimity. Cover some of the key themes in human formation. Though not comprehensive, these 5 are all core ideas, mainsprings for other aspects of human development. Reflecting on them will help incorporate these quote unquote fresh ingredients into our families so that our children are given the opportunity to grow into mature human beings, to live full and flourishing lives, and to prepare for steady growth in the other pillars of formation as well. Okay, now that I've read for 20 minutes and put you all to sleep, I will be totally content if I don't talk at all for the next hour and have you
Are you
guys
trying out with the
finish this all
audiobook
out.
version of that?
Yes, I will.
Yeah,
He was recording
be good.
the audiobook.
That's right. But please, what strikes you in all of that?
Then the human formation piece, as he's introducing it, it's essentially like building virtue, sounds like, but like natural virtue. And like my dad was saying, it's like it's not praying the rosary is how you build a virtue necessarily. It's like building perseverance, and maybe a understanding of some kind of faith or belief in things you're praying to. And then the rosary is kind of a result of that virtue, um, or this like stick-to-itiveness that you can instill. Um, I was thinking for a 2 and a 3-year-old, you don't really have much of an option but to teach some kind of natural virtue over like a religious thing. I mean, you could try and explain the rosary to them or scripture to them or a parable to them in ways that they might understand. But at the end of the day, it's still, to them, it's still a picture on the wall. And, Jesus and Mama Mary are somewhere in heaven and we love them, but it's not quite tangible. Um, but if you can teach them to share toys with another kid that they meet at the park, like they can see that that kid is happy, and you can use that as like, do you see when you took the toy out of the kid's hand, it made him cry and he ran away and he doesn't want to play with you if you're going to act that way. And so like you have to kind of use the real world things to teach the virtue, and then I guess the hope is that the side effect of that virtue is, and maybe when it's used like in tandem with the religion, is that you grow in the religion too, and like the actions of the religion.
Yeah, and even from a young age, I've found it works really well with the kids to try to use biblical language and incorporate that into like their natural human formation as well. So it's not just one or the other, but that there's 1,000 instances in the day where you need to help discipline, their original sin tendencies out of them and encourage and kind of create a greenhouse for all of the virtues that are also naturally instilled. And so there's so many situations where you can do things like use biblical language so it's important for you to be obedient to your parents instead of just saying, listen right away. Like Jesus does want you to be obedient. It's a virtue. Patience is a virtue, kindness, generosity, and to start weaving very early into their lives concepts of faith and reasons why, the objective reasons why we're asking them to do what they do, and they do respond to that very well. But you're going to have to teach them how to tell the truth, how to be kind, how to, be a decent human being, how to be patient, all these things constantly anyways. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty hard for you as a parent. So there's a lot of situations that you're just put in where you can just choose to have the discipline yourself as a parent to be intentional about how you're forming your child and not let it happen by accident. And that's a huge practice in your own self-discipline to just try to be confident and figure out how you're going to do that and be confident enough to hold the boundaries you set and figure out how to do it in a godlike, patient, gentle way. Mary, ideally.
Mm.
Mary and Joseph, however they did that with their perfect child.
I was thinking on it, knowing that I came from a very big family and we were devout at times and then other times not. And so it sent a lot of mixed messages to myself and my siblings, very frustrating, very hypocritical at times, very letter of the law and not spirit of the law. And so when we had children, and I was a child development major, so this is very dear to my heart, especially after having children and now grandchildren and working with children for, I think it's been 37 years that I've been in teaching of some sort. But just kind of looking back at my childhood as I'm raising our first few children and saying, where did I have angst or imagining myself as a little girl? And just as one example, for instance, I remember feeling guilty, but also wrestling with at Christmas time, like getting a few presents, and they were nice presents, but wanting more. And so somebody got more than you did, that kind of thing. And just being, and I didn't want that for my children. And, so we focused on Christmas being Jesus's birthday, and everybody did get a gift, but that was showing our love for Christ and each other and celebrating his day. And then on their birthdays, we made a bigger deal out of that for that particular child. That's just one thing that our family did. I don't know if it was right or wrong, but I just didn't want them to have that angst as much on Christmas Day. So I know that I adjusted things as I was raising, or we were raising our own children, and we discuss it and things like that. And and then the other part was Ken being in law enforcement and just thinking on these poor souls that he's dealing with day in and day out, and why they are making these terrible choices. And, the nature nurture thing that all happens with all of us. But so much of whether, sinful or not, but it was destructive, right? And they were destroying themselves. And I would just be like, why does it have to be like that? And so much is rooted in being self-centered, selfish. And of course, as babies, that's how we survive. We have to get our needs met, but as we grow and we have our needs met, and gradually we're developmentally able to, with either take care certain things, or handle different discomforts a little bit. And so gradually, very gradually, in the womb, every day counts for something, and really every day counts as a child is developing. As Catherine was saying, there are so many teachable moments. It's incredible. And of course, sometimes we get tired and we want to sit on the couch and just say, "Stop hitting your brother and sister. I told you to go to bed, get your chamois on." But yeah, there's always these teachable moments. And then sometimes I was just thinking, I wish I could go back in time a little bit and say, I wonder. And this is a blessing of being a Nana now, because I'm not their mom, and I can say, I wonder if Jesus obeyed his parents when he was told to go to bed. I wonder if he did. I wonder if he didn't want to sometimes. And then they're like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna try that one.
Yeah. And I know we kind of tried to order things looking at the Holy Family and looking at virtue and looking at, where vices came from. So we would do the opposite, There was a vice, selfishness, then we would try to be generous. Let's work on that. But anyway.
Kenny, I'm curious, what are some of your earlier memories, do you think, of your parents, just both, and would I think it's important to emphasize that this category of human formation is not limited to, although I'm also not trying to to trivialize the importance of disciplining and correcting misbehavior. Of course, that has its place, but human formation, and first of all, in the sense of healthy relationships between parents and children, and healthy relationships, between parents themselves, and then proper, guidance and affirmation and encouragement. And Ken talked about rewarding, right? Rewarding positive behavior. And what comes to mind as you think about like your own childhood and receiving that from your parents?
Yeah, one of the words that you used from the book was generous, reason to be generous. I think that was something that I don't know. I don't know. I mean, this is a good talking point, Mom and Dad. I don't know how intentional it was or not, but I think that was very. It was a major point, I think, in our upbringing. Like yeah, both my parents helped so many people all the time. And they would make us do it with them. They wouldn't make us do the thing, but it was like, hey, today, this Saturday, we're going to go help this family move or clean their house or um, do their yard for them or whatever. And these weren't just, yeah, they weren't just family members. They were people that my mom met randomly through church, knew barely or met one time. And um, we would all go there and we would all hem and haw about it all day. But I think the important thing is that like my parents were always there doing it and working harder than all of us as they did it. And then we would be there doing it with them, and then we'd wrap up at the end of the day, but and get a reward for it. Typically, go out somewhere or get something nice. But I mean that happened a lot. I mean, a lot. So I think that was a key point in our upbringing and something that like Catherine and I have talked about wanting to raise a like a hardworking and generous Catholic family. I think there's a lot of virtue that goes into like that, waking up early on a Saturday to go help someone move. There's a lot of different things I think at play there. So you can kill a lot of birds with that particular stone. Uh, that and then hardworking. So it's kind of along the lines of that. But I'd say, yeah, getting a lot of work done and working hard and having a sense of accomplishment and pride in your surroundings and things you create, things you can offer to others by working hard. Um, yeah, those are some of the elements I think to it.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So my first memory of you guys, well, maybe my second memory of you guys was of stopping to help somebody do something. And it was Memorial Day. So today we're recording this on Memorial Day. It's Memorial Day 2016. I started at St. Thomas as a seminarian yesterday, 9 years ago. And we were like, hey, or you guys were like, hey, we're going to Silverwood tomorrow. You want to come with us? Yeah, definitely. Well, there's mass at the cemetery first. And so we'll do that first and then we'll go. Okay, great. Go to mass, park my car at the cemetery, get in the car with you. And we start driving to go to Silverwood. And it's like, oh, wait, we got to make a stop first. And we stop at some random street. And Emily jumps out and runs out to a lady's apartment to go take her trash out. And then she runs back in the car. And then we get back in the car and go to Silverwood. Is this memory at all correct? Maybe I made it all up.
If Emily got out, I think I know where it was at that time. And yeah, sounds about right.
Awesome.
It's on the way.
Yeah. No, but so good.
Dumpster diving, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
looking for shoes.
Yeah. Yeah. Emily was actually looking for toys in her trash. That's what she was doing. But I mean, yeah, how did you know that person? Maybe not that individual, or you said you maybe remember Teresa, but in general, how did you orchestrate these acts of service?
Honestly, just I didn't go out of my way for sure. I knew that for teenagers it was good for them not to have a whole lot of time to be idle. And I also I wanted them to know that other people out there needed help. And sometimes it was just, a lot of times it was just like, I would say, I felt that the Holy Spirit was calling us to be there for those people during a hard time a lot of times it was a hard time. Sometimes there were divorces or illnesses or
Elderly.
a lot of elderly. Yeah. And they didn't have family around. And I knew that could bring them a little bit of joy. And it was good for our children to see that and not, get too wrapped up in themselves. And I know that they didn't always like it or appreciate it. They're like, again, Mom, and I say, yeah, we should be done in half a day or whatever the case. It always went longer. I know, Kenny. It always went a few hours longer.
It's the selling part of it.
Yeah.
You're selling it, take half a day.
Yeah. But yeah, I just felt that those people, we had a call to do that at that time, to help people. I imagine they're feeling like they're drowning, and you can't turn your back and just walk away. And the kids didn't always know the details of why these people are hurting. They're not able to do it themselves. They need help.
Can you speak a little more into, so understandably so, the kid, Kenny and his siblings would sometimes complain and say, oh, I'd rather be playing golf or going to the lake or doing something else or sleeping or what have you. But yeah, because I could see one objection being, well, no, you don't want to force that onto the kids. You don't want to push it too hard. You don't want to overdo it and so forth. And feel free to give like contextual thoughts that you have, but also specifically like in the moment, what did you do? And you, both of you, what did you do and say, to both be firm in carrying out what you had set up to do, right? Ken talked about this before too, about how important it is to have follow through with expectations and so forth, but while not doing it in a way that would brood resentment towards you and towards them and towards being generous and so forth.
Well, there was definitely a reasonableness to it. It was not, we were not, working hours and hours every day, forcing them to do things that were unreasonable. Okay. Everything was, the kids were, they're doing their school and they're doing all this. It's just on a particular Saturday, if it snowed 4 feet and we have an 80-year-old couple whose roof might collapse, we can say, okay, we can reasonably help these folks by spending 4 hours shoveling their roof off on a Saturday. We still have Sunday together. We're still doing our things in an appropriate way. So there was a reasonableness to it. And I don't know if Kenny felt that way. Sometimes it doesn't. Okay, it's not fair. We have our one Saturday that we can do something. Well, we can spend half a day doing something, helping someone, and then go do something fun afterward, or have all day Sunday or whatever. So I think it was just a balance, with just the normalcy of life and getting things done, but helping people, even though most of the time we would never say no, when we would rally and figure out how to do it, because most of the time we would just do it. But in most cases, the things were reasonable to do. It was nothing taxing on everyone. It was, kind of, a nuisance, and it was a thing, but it felt like that because you had to, spend your free time doing it. But again, I guess I go back to, it was a balanced thing, and it was nothing that was inappropriate. So, if somebody felt like, well, it's not fair, well, you have a few hours, to give to your, fellow people who need help. They need help. And it's nothing for us to go there as a team and move when you can show up with 5 or 6 people and just, crush it for a few hours. That would take them days. So, you can rationalize it, and you do, and it does give you a feeling, of accomplishment that you've worked together as a team to generally help these people who, like Teresa said, are drowning. And it's a wonderful thing to help a fellow human being, and that they appreciate it. So again, I guess it's a balance thing.
Mhm.
Yep.
I think if the kiddos, they might whine or cop an attitude or something like that. And usually I'd give them grace, like okay, that's fine, I understand, but get in the car. Go get the rakes or go get the shovel, and we'll have fun afterwards, and they'll really appreciate it. And it won't take that. And I wasn't very good at judging how long things took normally. So I would say it would take a couple hours and it was 4 hours or whatever. But usually by the end, when we were on our way home, they felt okay about things, and they got to, go out with friends or watch a movie or do whatever. I'm sure there are times I
They
know,
took advantage for sure.
and many hands make light work. Here we go.
The reasoning was always there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a reason.
My
It
dad
wasn't
saying
just
that line, like, we can show up with 6 people and crush it, and it would take them all week to get this done. It's like, well, yeah, like, we know that to be true. We can't argue with that. Or without going into detail, they would say something like, this lady's got 3 little kids and their dad can't help them this weekend. So, they've got a lot of heavy stuff and they need their furniture moved. It's like, well, if their dad's not there, someone's got to help them move it. So like they would give us enough reason that you couldn't really argue with it. Can't argue with that.
Your family always had a lot of fun too, like growing up. I mean, we knew each other as teenagers. The Dodge family was always the fun family. So like, it's not like their parents are just cracking the whip all the time. Like, I mean, they hosted all of these nights where any unlimited amount of teenage friends could come over. They would provide food, fun, bonfires. I mean, just like all the time. You guys were always hosting things, providing a great, like, safe, wonderful Catholic environment, and watching like Catholicism videos with Bishop Robert Barron and pray the rosary, and then everybody gets to play volleyball, and like creating tons, like just as fun. The fun balanced the work. So it was like lots of effort put in on both sides, I think, from your parents to give you lots of great opportunities. And
thank you, Catherine. That was very nice to say.
yeah, you guys were totally, you were always a fun family. Like, oh yeah, Dodgers are hosting something. This is gonna be great. You always put in so much effort.
They were great kids. I'd sit there and cry looking at 50 kids in our front room all praying the rosary, and I'm just like, this is so beautiful. Here I go again. And then my kids are like, Mom, are you crying again? Stop.
That's so beautiful. I mean, that's, in my mind, that's like the ideal youth group, gathering at somebody's home.
Very organic.
Yeah, and the families, and they're, getting together, good food, good fellowship, doing some formation, so that would be, so this is nothing new, right? So, but now we have kind of these terms to categorize these things. So like watching that DVD, that's in the intellectual formation pillar, and then praying the rosary, that's in that spiritual formation pillar. But then also going out and playing volleyball. And that's like a key integral piece of this whole puzzle. And to be doing all this together. That's so good.
Kenny, I'm trying to remember how old you were when all that started, or maybe 15 or 16. He headed it up. He like made the announcements and let people know about it. So it was pretty awesome. So I'm like, you go, son, you go.
Wow.
We'll make the popcorn. Snack.
That's amazing. Do you remember that, Kenny? Do you remember that pretty well? And what was that like? What moved you to do that?
I don't remember starting it. I don't remember what caused to start it. I remember when the Catholicism video series came out, and I remember liking it. And I think started by inviting 8 or 10 kids over. And then, it was just word of mouth from there. They just started inviting people. yeah, I think we had 40 or 50 kids at like the height of it. We'd watch that. We'd say chaplet or rosary after, and then play ping pong or volleyball. It's cool.
So good. So good.
And Father, that literally saved me because I would drive home from working, 12 hours and either having to, deal with, you know, difficult people, difficult kids, difficult family situations. And I would drive home after that long day and see 25 cars parked in my driveway. And I thought, oh my goodness, the last thing I want to do is be around all of these people. And I walk in there and here are 40 amazing kids. And it just rejuvenated, it saved me. It really did. And knowing that there are still good people there when you're just dealing with some of the, challenging circumstances, that you're thrust into in police work, but then going there and saying, "Oh my goodness, look at this is a beautiful thing." So it was amazing, yeah, what had happened there. So.
So beautiful. And gosh, I have three different questions here. One is for Ken Senior. Did you have any semblance of that growing up? And if not, when you saw that happening with your own kids, what what always stirred up in you? Let me ask the other two questions before I lose them, but then feel free to to talk about them however you like. To Catherine, we've talking a lot about the Dodges here. The big Dodges passing this on to Kenny. Um, but anything you want to add from your own upbringing that you remember from your parents, and it kind of highlights from your own upbringing, either things that they did that were similar uh, that you'd want to make sure to reinforce, or maybe other things that we haven't talked about that with you think are complementary, and I already forget the third, so that's okay.
Maybe it'll come back.
Yes.
Miss Catherine, you can go first.
Ladies first.
Oh, okay. Um, yeah, I think some things that stood out growing up, this kind of goes back to like in the teenage years, my parents were really big on making sure we had healthy peer relationships. In a lot of ways, they were very protective over that, but also, in a sense of like being very encouraging of just creating good like social situations for us. So, all our friends were usually typically from church or our homeschool group. We were homeschooled, so I guess that does kind of put a different dynamic that some people are in where you may not exactly have as much control over that. You can't exactly control who your kids are interacting with, all throughout the day. But in so many ways, they were always hosting, like, they'll get the pizza, have your good friends over, go to adoration first, then come back to our house. And a lot of it was just like, yeah, like come back to our house. Or whenever we wanted to hang out with our friends, they're like, you can always have people over here. And that, or like, oh, or I need to know where you're going, or that sort of thing, in a sense of like they were always creating ways for us to interact with in healthy ways with other good teenagers. And that's like a very present memory and I think formation thing in our teenage years, to where we were surrounded by all sorts of other kids. And Kenny wanted to start the Catholicism videos and did that, and you see other peers and teens taking on leadership roles in their faith, which is inspiring to you, something we can all participate in. We all started a pro-life group and did various, we had a board and we had a mission statement and we did various fundraisers, and that sort of thing. And so it's beautiful to just give your kids opportunities for that and to encourage them and just kind of help set it up. And then it becomes a natural thing. Like that was a very cultural thing. Growing up, my older siblings did it. We did it. It was just always just a given in all the communities, whether when we lived back in Seattle and then we moved to Idaho as well. And when your peers are so important to you, I think that's a great way to help your kids stay Catholic. And then, yeah, and we were encouraged, like very much within our family, we are expected to be generous to each other. And so, we did have high expectations for kindness within the family. That was but you know, was very much encouraged with love and set by example. And I think that when I try to think back to like how my parents disciplined, because I'm going through this with my kids and I'm like, what did my mom do? Because I seem to think back and remember there was like a lot of warmth and love, but we also had 9 kids in a pretty disciplined household. And so there had to have been some sort of, um, you know, rules and expectations that were followed. But I just think my mom was very disciplined and orderly and created a very peaceful and harmonious life for all of us kids. You know, she stayed at home, she homeschooled, so we very much had I don't remember like a ton of chaos considering we had 9 kids in the house. I'm probably just forgetting because I'm sure there was, but there was like a lot of, you knew, yeah, usually, but there's just like happy, joyful, you know, joy in the work. We all participated together. We'd all clean the house together, but it was always fun and you got to have a soda and listen to your special CDs on your Walkman or whatever while you did it. So like lots of joy and hard work. And for little kids, they don't know the difference between work and play until they're like 4 or 5 anyway. So that's something we like to do with our kids. Like, you know, it gives us a sense of purpose. It gives them a sense of confidence. They love to help unload the dishwasher. So like, why not help, you know, give them that as a chore, wiping the table. Like they feel great about that. They love helping in the garden. So we like to incorporate our kids too and like work hard, do it joyfully, and it's a chance to connect. Because I always have a lot of work on my plate, so I can't just like sit on the floor and play all the time. So we can have fun unloading the dishwasher and like making up a story while you do it or that sort of thing. And that's how you kind of make for lots of moments of connection, especially when you're with your little kids all the time. It can be really hard, or you can just make the most of it. And it's never perfect. It's always super messy, but you try to remember that. And I think our parents both did that really well. So it was modeled well for us. That kind of snaked around a lot, but just random things.
No, that's great. Yeah, no, that's beautiful. You know, one time, must have been last time I was up there, I was at your parents' house, the Big Dodger's house, and Mikey ran across the yard and ran across the bridge, and he was what? He's 5 now, 4?
Five.
5. So maybe he was 4 last year, and runs across and runs up and comes in the house and comes in and he's like standing up, looking at us. And I said, Mikey, what are you doing? And he looked at me, he was like, I'm just right here. And that like struck me as like he's 4 years old. He's like free, he's confident, he's like literally upright and confident. He's like, I'm just here. That was his answer. I'm just right here.
That was
Great.
that was earlier today. Xavier like had a toy on the floor, or he threw something on the floor. Maybe it was his sister's thing. And I said, Zave, why is that right there on the floor? And he goes, because I put it there. And just like genuinely like, why are you asking? You saw me put it there.
It was the plate
Yeah.
of roses.
What 4-year-old?
That's a really dumb
And
question.
then roses.
It was
Yeah.
food.
Can you ask me more intelligent questions, Dad? Come on.
That's right.
Obviously.
Yeah. And you know, these groups, just to flag it, that the Bishop Barron group started by Kenny, and then you said you did a pro-life group together. So those are examples of that apostolic formation. And maybe both of your parents encouraged you and helped facilitate it, but it seems a clear example of this, what is it, this framework that by focusing strongly and intentionally on the human formation very early, on the spiritual formation very early, on the intellectual formation as you're growing up, then the apostolic fruits are gonna burst out of that. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, I've learned from my parents that I need to be attentive to other people's needs because every dang Saturday morning we go and help somebody move and take their trash out. And so now I'm already like trained, like conditioned. My worldview is one in which I'm attentive to what's going on. And now, okay, I see this need in the parish and this need in the life of these families. And so what is it that we can do to help meet that need? Were you a part of that, Catherine? Like, would you go to
The Catholicism nights,
hmm
I did go to some of those. We had just moved, so we were still newer, so we didn't go to all of them. We went to some of them. And then the pro-life group that we started together along with several other friends. So we were all like on the board together. I can't remember.
Amazing.
I think we were still just friends at that point. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I thought
I
he
think it's
wants to start a pro-life group. Maybe we should get married later.
yes.
And that was not a
That's
that
how we met. It was an opportunity to meet spouses. I mean, it's like you're all teenagers, you're all scoping out like what sort of person do I like? Who do I want to date? Even if you're not allowed to date yet, you all have crushes anyway. So at least like, just fill your girls' lives full of really cute Catholic boys who have great morals and character, and it like, facilitates some good taste, hopefully.
Yes. Beautiful. What were you going to say, Ken?
No, I was just gonna say, and that was not intentional. That
Mm,
what we had done, the fact that you're bringing this up, that is a byproduct of
mm,
what we were doing. Um, you may have been that smart. I was not that smart. We were just
mm,
looking to help people and show our kids
mm,
that
mm,
people needed help. So if that
mm,
that is the byproduct of what happened, and then the kids take it
mm,
and run with it, well, that's a beautiful thing
mm, mm,
that was not intentional or that we were thinking about at the time, about what you would do with maybe these lessons other than, um, just the natural caring for a neighbor who needed help. So,
mhm,
and
mhm,
that was ingrained, I think, early on, for sure.
mhm, mhm, mhm,
I was going to say we did two particular books, and then there were a lot of other ones, but one was The Hidden Power of Kindness, and I can't remember who wrote it. I'm so sorry. But it
mhm,
was the little snippets, like easy, quick little read. And we would read it either at lunchtime or, right after prayer time in the morning or with their religion and just discuss. We did a lot of discussing, especially in the teen years, as they started, asking questions. And I wanted them to make their faith their own. And I knew that, we keep going through the motion, we keep living our faith as as a family, but they would see, maybe me go to a retreat and go deeper or read a certain book or whatever as they were younger. And then they started doing that and reading the lives of the saints and things. But, and the other book was The Privilege of Being Catholic. And I thought that was a good one for them to read. We read it as a family. To understand the gift that the faith is, and they've been given, even born into it, but now, do you believe this and what a gift it is, and are you ready to take it, and you'll be in charge of helping your faith grow at some point, because I can't do it for you. This
mhm,
is yours. So
mm. Beautiful. Let me ask you, Catherine, one more question before um, handing off to Ken, if you want to answer my previous question, Ken. But Catherine, you mentioned, and this actually relates to the book that Teresa just mentioned, The Hidden Power of Kindness. You mentioned that there's a high expectation for kindness in your home. That really strikes me. It's like, what do you mean by that? What did that look like? And do you know how that was fostered? How did your parents set up that environment, that culture?
I guess we were expected to, speak kindly. If we were being teasing each other or being sassy, we were always, reminded like you need to be kind to your sibling, you need to be generous to your sibling. Kindness starts in the home, or charity starts in the home. My mom said that all the time. She still says it all the time. Charity starts in the home. And so she'd say that all the time when we were just bickering or we were being selfish, or she was encouraging us to be, generous, sharing something even though we didn't have to, or helping out your sibling even though you didn't have to. Um, and, my parents certainly modeled that too. I think they were very kind parents. Um,
Like with each other and
yeah, they were
and with you
kind.
guys? Mm.
They were really kind with each other. I think my parents did a great job of modeling kindness to each other. I don't remember seeing my parents really ever fight. They weren't snide to each other. They weren't sassy to each other. I mean, anything that they would expect, the way they expected us to treat each other and treat them, they treated each other that way. And that's something that I think my parents modeled really well, was like a healthy, very loving parental relationship, which is something that Kenny and I also try to really like keep in mind in front of our kids as well. Um, just the way we talk to each other, the way we treat each other, and not only for our own relationship, like it's not fake, but to realize that my parents put that a lot of effort into their own, like having a very loving relationship and being physically affectionate towards each other in front of the kids, telling each other they loved each other or apologizing to each other if they did, become short or whatever. And I can hardly even remember that happening much. I know that the disagreements happened, but they would always kind of like wait and be patient and have that discussion behind closed doors. They were always very much on the same page. And they'd say, like, we're on the same team. Mom and dad are on the same team. And that gave us like a lot of confidence and stability too. And then something to look for when we were looking for marriage partners, but also, yeah, like we know that that loving relationship that they had for each other extended to us too. Um, and that gives you confidence in there's just so much freedom and confidence that comes in knowing that you're securely loved and your parents securely love each other and that's not going to change, and that their love for you isn't going to change, and you see that modeled out day after day after day, not only towards you but within all the other relationships in your family. um, yeah, and it teaches you about the love of the Father, because I think that's so much, we learn so much about our relationship with the Father through our relationship with our parents, which is hard as a parent. And you're like, that's a lot of pressure, but helpful, I think. And I think there's probably tons of times where my parents were like, okay, how would God treat the situation in terms of difficult, how do I discipline? When are you, yeah, I mean, of course, you're always kind, you're always patient, but how do I balance that?
Yeah, um, and this maybe will be a good segue to Ken, but the yeah, just what you said there at the end about the pressure of that reality that, parents are the first expression. How did you say it? The first experience of God.
Yeah,
Like,
your experience, you learn a lot about your relationship with the Father through your relationship with your parents, for good or bad,
yeah, right.
and carry that into your spiritual life as a young adult, where then you have to maybe sort through some of that because it's never perfect. But
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I think I thought a lot about that, and that's been a big part of my own journey. And I think what's really important to highlight in that lens is that that's a that's a lens for us to see ourselves as a son and a daughter. Not first of all a lens for us to see ourselves as the parents, in that dynamic. It's like, okay, now that I know that I experienced the love of the Father through my experience of the love of the parents, or at least that's my initial disposition. Now that I know that, this helps me to know maybe how well I'm relating to the Father in the ways that I relate to my parents well. That translates to a healthy relationship with the Father. That serves as a bridge towards that relationship with the Father. But then also I can see, oh, okay, maybe these unhealthy relationships or these unhealthy areas of my relationship with the Father actually aren't dependent. They actually aren't. They actually don't need to remain my experience of my relationship with the Father. Maybe they're part maybe they're part of the brokenness of my relationship with my parents, and that doesn't have to remain my relationship with the Father. That can actually be healed so that I can have a more integrated relationship with the Father. I think that's where we want to stay with that, because otherwise, if we flip that and we say, okay, therefore I have to be God to my children, or in my case, to my parishioners. I have to be God to my parishioners. Otherwise, they're gonna have bad relationship with their parent, with God. That's too much. And now we put ourselves in the place of the Savior and all these other things, and then we create all sorts of other types of problems. So I'm glad you just flagged that. It's like, okay, that's a lot of pressure, but and yes, and thankfully we don't need to assume that responsibility, because that would be like a type of kind of ungodly self-reliance. That there's a term from Bob Schuchts, like ungodly self-reliance. I'm trying to I'm trying to be God for my children or for my parishioners when God doesn't intend that, God doesn't want that. Anyways, that's a bit of a tangent, but sorry, Ken, I asked you a question 3 hours ago. Would you want to speak to that? I know it's kind of a tender question too.
No, I,
What was
so
the question?
you mentioned about my upbringing. Is that correct? Is that how I'm?
Yeah, you've shared about your upbringing in previous episodes, and you shared just now that anecdote of coming home and seeing the scene of your children and all these
Right.
other teens gathering around, learning about Catholicism, about praying the rosary, having good, wholesome time together. And I could just, maybe I'm projecting, but I could just imagine that would force some of that stuff from your childhood to bubble up.
Yeah, I don't know. That is an interesting, I guess, which is part of the damaged goods that I am. I was probably able to put a lot of the childhood stuff in a box
Mm, mm,
and maybe, and I think it comes out at times. It was a challenging childhood for sure. I did have uh, a very stable home with my dad. It was very stable and secure, and I felt secure. But I don't know that I ever made that particular I never had that thought that you just presented, that I came home and I brought up that childhood. I mean, obviously, home to me was very, very important because that was the safe space, right? That
mhm,
was
mhm,
where, I was out in the world and dealing with the evil
mhm.
for the most part. I was dealing with evil things. And when I come home, that is the safe space. So when I come home and then all of a sudden the safe space has been invaded by teenagers, you think, oh my goodness. But that was the beautiful thing. I mean, that was the healing thing, is that there's goodness in the world. And I needed to be reminded of that,
Mm, mm.
definitely, by a bunch of teenagers. Helped me in a
Yeah.
weird way, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, no, thank you. And yeah, good. Thank you. Well, let me just say, and we can start wrapping up here, but um, maybe in future episodes, I will, yeah, go into these some of these sub chapters. But so order and having to do with physical order, also ordering our time. And to this, you've mentioned a book before, Teresa. Is it The Well-Ordered Home?
The mother's rule of life.
The mother's rule of life. Okay.
Rule of life.
Uh,
I don't know.
I'll
A
close
well-ordered home sounds like a good one.
it. Mother's rule of life. Let's go with that. Uh, and then, so the patron for that is Saint Benedict. And then sincerity, fruits of sincerity, sincerity with God. Patron for that is Saint Athanasius. Chastity, growing in chastity. A personal reflection from parents, Richard and Leah Moss. And Saint Cecilia is the patron for that. And that, gosh, that topic. I mean, it's always been relevant, but it's probably more pressing today, just given how accessible traps in regards to chastity, in regards to lust are. There's a great YouTube channel by Jason Everett called Lust is Boring. I'm often tapping into that and recommending that to folks. But chastity, fortitude, Teddy Roosevelt, the man in the arena, and the need for fortitude today. And the patron is St. Thomas More. And magnanimity, magnanimity in the life of Jesus. Magnanimity is such a fun word to say. we have our virtues program here at our school, and every Wednesday one of the priests gives a little virtue talk to the students. And last week it was, or maybe 2 weeks ago now, it was magnanimity, and in the beginning I said, "Does anybody know what the virtue of the week is?" And a few hands went up, and it was like magnanimity. Like, okay, yeah, pretty close. Yeah. Uh, Mañana. Yeah. Yeah. Very close. Yeah. Good guess. Yeah. And then we said it, we had to break it down like, okay, magna. So magnanimity in the life of Jesus, the urgent need for magnanimity. And then Saint Ignatius of Loyola is the patron for that. And so, yeah, I don't know what to say here. I guess just don't feel like you have to say anything, but anything strike you as particularly relevant or helpful or present in your lives, either growing up or practicing in your life now? Order, sincerity, chastity, fortitude, and magnanimity.
I think as a young mom, I remember trying to create some sense of order, which gets completely demolished, by, I don't know, breakfast at 7:30, clean up. It's probably a mess by 8, if not 8. But you're trying, it feels like you're just always trying some sort of order, but order of time helps a lot. If I know on days that we left it, just kind of open-ended, um, uh, things didn't get done. Kids would usually get a little bit idle or owly at each other and get tired of each other if they didn't have some kind of direction. But sometimes you just like to see everybody relax and do their thing or whatever. But yeah, with summertime, for instance, they still had like a workbook in the morning after some prayers and do the chores, and because we had the animals and things like that. And then let them have their playtime and whatever. Usually a little bit of a siesta or, cool off from being outside and either reading or doing something quiet, and then back at it in the afternoon. So just that mother's rule of life was very handy to me, just to kind of keep a flow of what was going on, starting your day in prayer and being intentional about how that was ordered, and be ready to, getting this chores done, things like that. And then the sincerity was interesting as the children got older and started telling stories, and maybe not always the truth, and teaching that virtue, and having to get pretty creative sometimes, because you don't want to just snuff them out, and you also want them to know that if they do lie, they're not going to get so much in trouble that um, they're going to do it again just to avoid the punishment. So it's that discussion, a gentle, being very creative, and how am I going to reach this child with this, whatever it is, situation. And so I just remember, usually they start a good whopper around 4, 5 years old. And you go, what is going on? But yeah, and then like the chastity and things like that as they got older, and just all that, a lot of discussion. There's always teachable moments. So
Yeah. Good.
mhm.
Yeah, it does seem like orderliness. It's not what is it? It's not a silver bullet, and it's not um the only piece. And of course it can be over exaggerated, and it can be brought about in unhealthy ways, right? Order can, like a tyrant, right? A tyrant brings about order, and he succeeds. There's order. but that's obviously not good. That's not healthy. And so that's all true. But that's not to say that order itself, or healthy order, maybe we can call it, isn't not only good, but really important. And yeah, and I'm saying this as I've already started to pack some things. So my office space here is a complete mess and chaos. And
Good angle on the camera.
yeah, I like it, rearrange the things up there just before I turn on the camera, so it looks like it's ordered in here. But
Like an Instagrammer, just fix the one corner. My
yeah,
house is
that's right. That's right.
Very
Good, you
good.
guys. Should we call it a night?
That's good.
Thank you all so much, especially Kenny and Catherine. I know you guys are in a super busy and tiring season, so thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Father.
You're welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Until next time, you guys. God bless you.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you, Father. Good night.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Desert Wanderers. If you liked it, give us a thumbs up as well as subscribe down below. We're produced by Salt and Light Radio, so you can find us on social platforms at Salt and Light Radio or Desert Wanderers Podcast. We produce episodes every week and we launch them for you on Wednesdays. So make sure to tune in for next week's episode and we'll see you then.